So, John, one thing that strikes me from the last few weeks is there are all these dangers, thieves and robbers, predators, hirelings that are not all in. Um, any of those things could lead the sheep astray or threaten them. And those threats are people, all right? And so, and maybe this is part of just the age of kind of have this spirit of independence or even rebellion or whatever. But like, is it okay for me to ask, like, I can see people being like, well, why do we need pastor people? Like, if the Lord's the good shepherd and there's all this like risk with being diverted by someone who's into their own agenda or just wants a following or is just not even all committed to what the Lord's even trying to do in my life. Like, do people really need a pastor? Like, it seems like that's a lot that could go wrong, that does go wrong. What would you say, like, for people who are just saying, can I just have the Lord and the Word and live my life?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I think the answer is we do need a pastor. And I think the reason is found in the way we learn.
Hmm.
I think we learn by example much more quickly than we learn by trying to think through something or conceptualize something. Fortunately, the millennial generation is much more mentorable than previous generations, not so Aristotelian in their thinking. They learn by example better. But there's a certain part of Jesus coming into this world, becoming a human being, having a face, having a voice. There's something about how God at times needs to get that close to us. He needs to be, as we say, in our face, only not in a negative way. He needs to be there that close with a human voice so that what we are going to hear from God will be direct and it will be unambiguous, at least to where we can't get confused over it. Kathy reminded me last night of something that she's read, that the longest distance between 2 points on earth is the distance between the heart and the mind. To know something in your mind and to feel it viscerally or in your heart, sometimes a pastor can bridge that gap in the most perfect moment, in the last moment possible. Sometimes you can hear a human voice in a teaching, in a sermon setting, in a message setting, or in a visit setting. You can hear the human voice in just the last moment of time and respond to the Lord. I was asked one time to go to the bedside of 3 sisters from New York. They were older than me. I was about your age at the time, and they were about my age. And their dad was dying, and he was in a coma. He didn't know the Lord, and they wanted prayer for him in the hospital. And I put my hand on his chest as he laid there on a machine and began to pray for him. And they were sad and they were crying, and I said his name by voice, which I always made a practice of in the hospital visits, to speak to even people who were unconscious, as long as the meter's going. Said his name, told him that if he could hear me, I was going to ask one thing of him, that he put his trust in Jesus, that no matter what was going on inside of him, if he could hear me, to put his trust in Jesus. And he made a sound. He actually made a sound, and the 3 sisters had their hands on him too, and they literally were all convinced. Now, I'm not sure any of them knew the Lord either. And there's something about that human voice that was in that moment, was closer than God could get to any of them. Maybe not the man in the coma. I'm not sure about that, but possibly could reach him in that last dying moment. So there are people Dave, this is one we could go a double session on,
Yeah.
because I have been teaching at times and been led to say things that have tremendous meaning and are so on target with a particular person that I had no idea of. One time in a Bible study, I just as an example said, if you're here tonight and you're trying to get away from cocaine abuse, the Lord can free you. And I made eye contact with a girl sitting at the very back that night. And she, years later, said that she was trying to get rid of cocaine addiction that night. And she never did it again after that.
Wow.
Because in her mind, God had spoken
the
through
Lord.
me,
Yeah.
had spoken directly to her.
Right.
So I think that we underestimate sometimes that being the last channel that God could have with us to reach us. A human voice, a human face looking at us in that moment. And not just with warnings, sometimes with love and compassion and acceptance,
Right.
and the things that we need to reconnect with God and to get by with Him.
Wow. Thank you for illustrating that a little bit more for us.